Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games, and I'm here with another Star Wars Destiny video. And today we have some exciting news. We've got more Empire at War spoilers. These are always fun. So let's take a look and see what we got. These actually came from a Team Covenant interview with Lucas Litzinger and his clone Jeremy. I call him his clone because apparently he speaks just like Lucas. Very weird, very weird. But that's cool that they're hive-minding. I like it. Alright, so let's take a look at the spoilers that we have in store for us. The first one that we're going to look at is K2SO because he's the big bopper that got spoiled. So, I want to start with some weird things about this before we even get into the card itself. The art on it is pretty bad. Like, I feel like my daughter could draw this and do a better job, so I'm a little surprised by it. It's not like it's bad like Ezra looking like a 40-year-old dude, it's just really blah. Second problem, dude is holding a blaster. I don't mean to spoil the movie, but he gets a gun, shoots people with it, and he has melee sides. Like, that makes no sense to me at all. I didn't even realize there were melee sides, right? So I'm going through my research. I'm like, what could go well with him? And I'm looking at these range things. I'm like, jetpack would be good. I was like, wait a second, he has melee sides? All right, so let's go into the character. Oh, for other last weird thing. What? K2SO is the same cost as Luke? What? What? Okay. Alright. Now we're done with all that. Let's get to the card itself. 12 health is awesome. His sides are pretty darn reasonable. He's got close to Vader sides with the 2 and the 3. He actually has 2 shields, which could be awesome. He's got resource. He's quite good. The problem, though, of course, is he costs 1520. And as we've seen for heroes, they just don't have the tools so far in the first 2 sets to really support 20 cost guys. Like, every time you see like a Vader Raider and then someone's like, I have a Luke deck that's just as good, and it's like, no, it's actually not. Like, it's fine. It's a decent deck. Luke's not bad, but there just isn't the Force Strike and cards like that to really anchor it. There's not the Holocron. So K2SO is at that really high cost point where you're going, okay, all right, I'm interested, I'm intrigued, let's see what else we got. And he has an amazing ability that is after you play or move a weapon onto this character for the first time each game, ready him, and that sounds insane. Now, of course, the drawback is to actually play a weapon on him, it costs 2 more, and that makes perfect sense. Otherwise, you could do utterly disgusting things with him. So, I've seen a lot of people say things like, and I initially thought the same thing, like, well, I'll just redeploy, right? Like, I'll play another character, I'll put a good weapon on them, it'll redeploy over to K2SO, he'll stand back up, and he'll destroy the world. And while in theory that sounds really cool, it has a whole slew of problems, right? So the first one is, if you have an elite K2SO and a cruddy guy, they're killing K2SO. His dice are pretty dang good. There's already 2 of them. They know if they kill that other guy and the weapon comes over, then he stands back up and blah, 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 blah. The other problem with this whole plan is he has to have already been used to be able to get the ability when the weapon comes over. And a clever opponent is not just going to let you do that. They're going to make you end up passing whole turns with K2SO and just leaving the other guy with 1 health, threatening to kill him, making you lose turns. It's not as easy as it sounds to get this perfect scenario where it just moves over at the right time. So I think more what you're going to have to do is one of 2 things. Either just run him at 15 cost and only 1 die, and then have more going on, like, say, maybe Ezra and a Padawan or something like that. Padawan seems great with him, by the way, because they have pretty good dice already. You put like a Saber on for 2, then it moves over to him. But the problem is if you take that approach, then when K2SO stands back up, it's like, he has 1 character die and a lightsaber. Like, it's not this big moment where you're like, boosh, now I wreck you. It's kind of like a, whatever. It's kind of a bala with no upgrades moment. So it seems to me what you're going to end up doing is something like loading him up with other stuff. And so far there's not a lot of other stuff to get all that excited about, especially since he's melee. There is Makashi training, which fits really well on him. So if you run him with, say, that deck I'm talking about, maybe him and a Padawan, and you put 2 Makashi trainings on him, now when that lightsaber moves back over, holy cow, look out. Or you could play just a 1-cost weapon on him. Maybe you put the baby blaster on him, which again isn't great because he's melee. But the point is, there are not a ton of things to load him up with. You have stuff like promotion, survival gear, all decent, but not really like that, oh yes, I'm gonna wreck you moment. One thing you can do though is put a more expensive equipment on him and then just overwrite it at some point, right, with a weapon. Maybe putting a riot baton on him for, say, 3 to 4 because you overwrote, and then maybe you have this really massive moment. So I think that's where I say riot baton. He's a hero. Okay, apparently we're running with Finn. Maybe there'll be a riot baton quality thing for heroes in the next set. I doubt it though. Only villain gets the busted stuff. But so the point is, I think that might be the better way to build him, is just going all in on him and trying to get a big blowout. But again, it's real hard for heroes to make that work. We've tried this with Luke. We've tried this with Obi-Wan. These don't work. We're hoping, everyone's hoping that K2SO is going to break the mold and be that 20-cost guy that gets it to work. My gut says no, but my heart says, please, let's make it cool, because he seems really neat. He just seems really cool. And then you can do some cool stuff where you pair him with, like, another 10-cost red unique guy and play leadership. And then he's standing back up all over the place. In one turn, he could stand back up several times and just be a monster. The problem is getting him to live that long. So I think you're going to have to pack him with a lot of defensive capabilities to keep him around. But he's certainly interesting. Again, I'm real surprised that they went with K2SO to be like Red's big bopper. That just seems really weird to me. But okay, cool, let's do it. And I'm excited to see what happens with it. Our next card we'll talk about is Spindown. Spindown's pretty exciting, actually. Neutral. This is big. So both sides now get access to a really amazing removal. It's a better version of flank as long as you have a vehicle on the board, and flank is freaking awesome. So this will be a 2-of in every single deck that runs any amount of vehicles, and having a card like this makes me think there's gotta be some more vehicles that are coming, right? Like, first of all, there's gonna be more vehicles coming. It's not like they're gonna have a set where they're like, nah, we're cool, we're all good there. But what I mean is more high quality vehicles. That would be really cool. And if there are, then this becomes awesome. I'm really hoping that we can reach that. We're already getting close, right? Like there's some villain decks that come close to being vehicle decks, and then you're like, wait, I have to have 2 TIE fighters? That's not bad. And then you put one down and you roll it, and you're like, yeah, no, this card sucks. Why do I have TIE fighters in this deck? They're terrible. Slave 1 has already reached that. Like, 4 is expensive, but boy, it's a good card for 4. If we get a really good vehicle for 3, maybe get a decent one for 2, now we can make an actual vehicle deck. Then Spindown becomes amazing. Maybe it's a 3-character deck to give it more health. Now flank's in the mix. Man, and if it's villain, he doesn't like you, and electroshock if it's yellow, and now you're like this amazing removal suite for cheap. I'm excited. I'm really excited for Spindown and what I hope that means. Like, it would be shocking to me if they made Spindown and they were like, what? No, there's no good vehicle still. Let's check that in just in case. And maybe. But I am definitely excited for this card. Alright, the Weapons Factory Alpha. This is a really weird battlefield. I love it. I love the design of it. I love the idea of, instead of going, alright, the turn's over, I was able to claim, now my vehicle is 1 less, but I had to spend that one, and now I can only get this little cruddy one. Now it's not online until next turn. It's a very slow card. I'm talking about the docking bay. But Weapons Factory flips this script and says, no, no, no. As long as you have it, you get it this turn for cheaper. It can be your first action. Boom, Slave 1 for 3. I think that's really strong. The problem, of course, with all of these vehicle battlefields is vehicle decks, in my experience, have all been extremely slow. It's very rare when I can get a docking bay off. It's more of like a, oh, cool, that worked out this turn. Or like, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth doing it right here because I can get a slave 1 for next turn. Yes, I'm giving up 3 damage, but it's worth it. I feel like you have to take big sacrifices in those decks. And I just feel like I'm not sure you can anchor a deck around this card. Like, it feels like a build-around card that can't be built around is basically what I'm trying to say. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully this does become the linchpin for a really cool vehicle deck. And so I love having it in the game. I'm just not 100% convinced that's going to have a huge impact. I have a feeling it'll have the same impact as Docking Bay, which is fairly minimal but scary. I mean, most people don't want to give you Docking Bay if you're playing vehicles. They're just like, well, you can have the shields, which in and of itself is not bad. Alright, next is Thermal Paint. Thermal Paint is a really weird card. I mean, we haven't seen a weapon yet with no dice. So we've got a diceless weapon. After you activate attached character, force an opponent to choose and deal 1 damage to one of their characters. So it's kind of cool for the low cost of 2. You get to just, every time you activate, you do damage. Unfortunately, they get to choose where it goes, so it's pretty low impact. It's just a little splash, it's a little drizzle outside. But you can discard it and deal 1 more damage to that character. And so that's kind of cool. Suddenly it's 2 for 2, which is, I don't know, feels a little overcosted for that. But the fact that you get to loop it then with the previously spoiled Sabine is really cool. The only problem I have with this card, I shouldn't say the only, but the biggest one, is I predicted we would see 1 more thermal card because Sabine's text. There has to be another thermal. And if this is the only thermal card, it's like, damn it. I really wanted a high impact thermal that I could get cheaper and cheat out with Sabine that has dice, whereas this is just kind of like, hey, do damage. Cool. Like it might have an impact if we can reach a threshold where it's kind of like the Palpatine thing. We've reached that threshold with Palpatine where it's just like damage. I don't care where you put it, dude. There's so much of it, it will catch up to you. Same thing with Planetary Uprising. But a turn from a Thermal Paint feels much more like, what, a mosquito bite? Oh, okay. And it does cost 2, so I don't know. I'm just not really sure where I stand on it. I don't think it's going to see play outside of Sabine. But maybe we're, like I said, we're going to reach that threshold. And I don't mind having the card in the pool. I'm just not sure it's going to have an impact. Alright, talking about impacts. Holy mackerel. Look at this thing. Oh my god. The LRIK Sonic Cannon makes the ATST look like it doesn't have sides. So a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. Now, it does cost a lot to pay for these, and so that part is cool. Like, if you're going to have something this expensive, or have sides this big, I like the cost on it. Like, it costs you 8 to do 6 damage. Now, that's hard to come up with, and if you came up with that, good on you. You deserve to do the 6 damage. It's also cool that you can exhaust one of your characters to pay the resource cost. I like that. I think that's a really cool idea. Because it puts a lot of strategy into the game, right? Like if you have a good character and a cruddy character, you know, the cruddy character with low health, the good character with a lot of health, and you see this hit the board, suddenly you're like, maybe I kill the cruddy character because it's easy to kill, and now they're having to exhaust their good character to use this. It's a really nice reward for running like a high resource 4-character deck with endless ranks. It's another cool thing you can spend that money on. Like, I love the design of this in a lot of ways. There's one way that I don't love it. And that's Pomaz. Like, we're in the middle of the Pomaz disaster zone, and it's just like, hey, Po, what's up, man? Here you go. Here you go, man. This will help you out a little bit. Did you need a 6, maybe? Like, I'm not sure you'd play 2 of these in a Pomaz, but just having access to 6 to be able to finish somebody, and it's already has what makes this card so bonkers. In fact, I'm sure it's a 2-of, because you can do the 4 for 1, the 3, like, because it's so flexible. It's like Poe's dream card. Oh, I didn't spend my resources last turn. Yeah, sure, I'll do 6, whatever, that's cool. So I'm just hoping that something's happening to Poe anyway, and so this becomes less impactful. I know some people have said this is a clear indication that Poe must be getting a nerf, or they wouldn't have released this card. But I think if you think about how far out the design cycles are, I don't think they realized Poe Maz was going to be as strong as it was when they were testing this card, because if they knew that, then they wouldn't have released it as it was, right? They wouldn't have had Fast Hands and Maz and Poe all synergizing so well. So my bet is that this does not have an impact on what happens to Poe, but I still think something happens to Poe. I think he's just, or Poe, the Poe Maz Fast Hands trilogy. I think something happens to that. But I don't think it's because, I don't think this is an indication that something is going to happen to it. But it does worry me a bit. But on its own, I like, and I also like that's neutral. I like that any villain, any vehicle deck has access to this thing. So it's pretty cool. All right, the last card we saw is Roll On and On and On. And that's cool. This is a really neat card. For only 0, you basically get 3 rerolls on a die. It's like a Night Sister on steroids. It's so cool of your opponent claims, and you have 1 card in hand, and they're just like, the odds are not that great. The odds are 1 in 6 that they roll what they want, and you're like, yeah, oh yeah. Okay, we just reduced those odds substantially with my 3 free rolls. So I don't actually know if this card will see play at all. I like the idea of it, though. I'm just, like, to me, it probably won't see play in most decks, because you can already just put a card in there that has a high impact in another situation and then discard it for a reroll. It's really going to be, to me, some sort of specific deck that really is all in on having big dice and needing them to hit. And then in that scenario, this could be really good. Also, maybe in a slower deck where you're expecting your opponent to claim first, and then you're going to have access to this. Because otherwise, if you roll it 3 times and finally hit the side you want, and then they just remove it, it feels kind of bad. Like, I might as well have only rolled it once at that point. I think cool plays with this will be giving it ambush somehow. I would have really liked if this was a yellow card, just so you could have done Infamous with it. That would have been really neat to be able to go Infamous, ambush, then I get 3 rolls, and then I get to resolve. So you're almost getting to resolve not quite any side of the die you want, but having a good shot at it. You could still do it with something like Swiftness, but man, that's a reach. Now you're like, I'm playing Roll On, which is a little bit on the edge, and then I'm playing Swiftness to make it better. No, you're not doing that. So we'll see. It's a cool card. What I like about all these cards that were spoiled is that they're all interesting, have their place. None of them on their own feel incredibly overpowered. The most powerful looking one on the surface is the Sonic Cannon, but it costs a fortune. Like, you have to pay 5 to get it down, and then you have to be able to pay more. We had a hard time playing the AT-ST for 6, and did not have this scenario, and it still had big sides. So, we'll see. I actually don't think this will see all that much play, but all of these cards, again, are cool, and they'll fit holes, which is, I think, more and more what we're going to see moving forward with our 3rd set now is, until we see a rotation, unless cards have power creep, they're fitting holes, right? Now the design team has this new problem of, like, how do we fit these cards into the current play set and make them playable without making them, like, 9s, right? Where it's just like, oh, it's completely busted. So hopefully you found this review of the new spoilers interesting. Check out the Team Covenant video for more details from the designers themselves. Who cares what I think? Listen to what the designers have to say about the cards. And so I'll see you next time on Tiny Grams Games.